Today is Monday, March 2nd, 2020, and this is a regular Moscow City Council meeting, and thank you. We got a full room, which is always exciting to see because we usually don't have that. So it's always good to see a good crowd here. With that, Maureen?
Please stand. We're going to say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Maureen. Okay, first item on the agenda is the consent agenda.
I move approval of the consent agenda as presented.
Second?
Okay, we got a motion by Art and a second by Sandra to approve the consent agenda as it stands. I will start to roll with Ann.
Aye.
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 Okay. Now we will move on to item number 2, staff recognition report. Gary, do you have anything for us this evening, sir?
Nothing this evening, Your Honor.
Okay, mayor's appointments. I do have one for council consideration, and that is Ryan Lazo, Farmers Market Commission, expiration 12/31/2020. This is a member at large position for the Farmers Market Commission.
I move approval of the appointment.
I'll second that.
Okay. A motion by Art and a second by Brandy to approve Ryan. I'll start the roll with Sandra.
Aye.
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 Okay. Ryan, we've got a big crowd. Are you anywhere? If you're out there somewhere, would you please stand up? He's not, so I didn't know whether he was or not. So many folks out there, I wanted to make sure if he was. I wanted to have him recognized. With that, we'll move on to item number 4, which is public comment and response period, where we allow folks to speak what's on their mind for 3 minutes. As long as something is not in front of planning and zoning or the Board of Adjustments. And things that are on the agenda tonight, but I will say if somebody's got a comment before we get into the reports, this has nothing to do with the Moscow Volunteer Fire Department EMS report, but if somebody else has got something they want to say, please come up, tell us who you are, sir, and let us know what's on your mind, and I'll give you 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Mayor Lambert, members of the council, city staff, and fellow citizens. My name is Ben Amon. I reside at 407 North Monroe Street, and I'm here this evening to introduce myself as the new executive director at Moscow Smart Transit. As you know, SMART plays an important role in the community with the 2 fixed route services and our Dial-A-Ride program, and SMART appreciates the support of the community and the city of Moscow. A little background about myself. I moved here in 1998. And I'm a graduate of the University of Idaho with bachelor's degrees in history and Spanish. I'm also finishing a Master of Public Administration this semester. I've spent the bulk of my professional career at U of I, holding various positions related to event production, facility operations, customer relations, and marketing. And I'm excited to be serving the community in this new role. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Well, Ben, I haven't had a chance to meet you yet, so congratulations about being on board, and you've got big shoes to fill.
Indeed.
Because the young man that ran it did an excellent job, and his predecessor did an excellent job, so we're looking at what you can build with that. Questions for Ben from the council?
No questions, but just a comment, because I'm the liaison to the Smart Transit Board, and Ben just only recently was hired and actually hasn't quite stepped in all the way, so there is an overlap between Dan and Ben here at the moment, getting trained up in what Smart Transit is all about. And the board is very happy to see a transition of this nature, and thanks so much for stepping up to it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ben.
I did not know we were going to have such a full house tonight.
That's okay, you're amongst friends.
All right. Mr. Mayor, City Council members, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you tonight. My name is Patty Brame. I am the owner of Kitchen Counter on Main Street. which is a small lunch and catering business that I opened in 2016. The issue I'm bringing before you tonight is in regard to kitchen counter sewer classification on our water bill as a restaurant. I have only 3 minutes, so I'll jump right in. I have a very high water bill for a small business, averaging about $450 a month. When I've asked why, since we are small, both utility billing and the water department have told me that if you serve food in any capacity, whether as a drive-through coffee shop or a hotel restaurant, everyone pays the same base rate of $309.92 plus $6.96 per 100 cubic feet. The high rate is needed to clean up what restaurants put into the sewer system, and I fully support this, and I want to pay my fair share. Most city staff I've spoken to agree that the rate system is not fair, but that a study is in the works to fix this. I have been hearing about the rate study since February 2016, and nothing has changed for me yet. And yet, on the Water Department's own homepage, there is a link to a 2013 rate study with recommendations for a 3-tier restaurant rate system, which, after I read it, seemed like a good thing, and I can give you that information or forward that to you if you'd like that. I recently requested a list of sewer designations on businesses from 1st to 6th Street and Main. After receiving this list, I have come tonight to ask you to change my sewer designation to commercial from restaurant. The commercial rate is only $71.92 a month. There are 11 food businesses currently listed as commercial or mixed use on Main Street. Out of the 19 food businesses on Main Street, only 8 are charged the restaurant fee, and they are much, much larger than mine. I'm not going to list the names of people who aren't charged the fee I'm charged, but it is public record, and you can find that out. I found it out in 2 days. Not only is this rate inequitable, it is not enforced fairly. Businesses have closed over these high water bills. To put it in perspective, my business has been charged $12,000 more in rate fees over the past 4 years than these other food businesses listed as commercial. I've also been told repeatedly that all food businesses pay the same. Obviously, this is not true. At this point, I'm asking for my rate back to January 2016, when I signed my lease, to be changed to commercial, and the monies I've paid over this time to be refunded to my business. I will be following this up with a letter to you with more details, and look forward to hearing back. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Patty, very much, and I know that we're looking into some things. Gary, is that not correct?
Yeah, in the current rate study, we are looking at some different tiered business rates. That issue was not accepted by the council back in 2013. So all I can say is it's coming, and Patty, if you would like to make a claim for those, you certainly can see the city clerk about getting a claim. But yeah, we're looking into it, and chances are, staff's recommendation is that we will try and break that out. As you know, there are lots of issues that have to do with that. We don't have a business registration or a business licensing program in Moscow. So being able to go in and find out what types of businesses people are engaged in is a little bit tougher. So a lot of issues there, but we'll get those shaken out in the rate study.
Okay, thank you, Gary, and this will be something we'll be looking at, because it has been a discussion point for us as well,
Can I
Patty.
just say one more thing? The fire marshal comes in.
Patty, you're going to have to go up to the podium because it's recorded.
That's correct. We gotta get you on TV so those folks
Okay.
watching us will.
In terms of like who's a restaurant and who's not, everyone who runs a food business is visited by the fire marshal every year to check our fire, all our fire extinguishers that they're up to code. So there is a list that could be easily found.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, council, distinguished guests. My name is Troy Zacharias, and you guys are familiar with me. Just want to say, first and foremost, EMS services here in Moscow seem to be a very politically and emotionally charged subject. And it is my hope that moving forward, we can open up some dialogue. And the second thing I want to mention is we're all people here. it was a certain amount of joy that leapt into my heart as one of these good firefighters stepped up and let my mother have a seat. This is the way we serve our community. PACT EMS would like to work alongside you. I'd like to reach a hand across the aisle and start to see each other as people. If you guys have got any questions for me, I'll stick around till afterwards. I have a bunch of cards. I'd love to do coffee with you. I'd love to continue to build the Moscow that we know into the great community that it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Troy. And item number 7, there will be a report because we've had PAC EMS in here the last 2 council meetings talking about concerns and that you have. And so those concerns, of course, are going to be addressed with this, through this report. So others want to come up and speak? Okay, with that, I'll move on to item number 5, Citizens Commission Report, Planning and Zoning Commission. Mike Ray's somewhere in the crowd. We got Wendy with you too back there somewhere?
I do.
Okay, there she is. She's just shorter than the guy in front of her. Hello, Wendy. Come on. I say that with all the love in the world because this lady's she's our chair of a number of commissions.
Thank you, Your Honor, council members. So I'm here tonight to introduce Wendy McClure. She's the chair of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and she was recently reelected chair for 2020. So without further ado, Wendy's going to talk a little bit about what the commission's been up to for the last year.
Mike, I thought for sure you was going to say Wendy's been elected to be the chair for the next 20 years.
I was afraid he was going to say that, too.
So, welcome, Wendy.
Oh, thank you. Good evening, Mayor Lambert and council, both past and ongoing, and you. It's nice to have you on board. And I'm going to give a report about what the Planning and Zoning Commission has been up to in the last year. First of all, I'll talk about membership. We have really one new member, Rich Beebe, who joined us, I believe, in January of 2020. And everyone else has been serving for between 1 year and probably 30-something years. If you, and I'd also, not listed here, is the incredible staff support that we get. And that includes Mike Ray, who makes my job as chair very easy, and Ann Peterson, who just is wonderful support in recording everything we say. Sometimes you go, did I really say that? And you probably did. But, and I also want to thank our council liaison, Brandy Sullivan, for last year working with us. And I understand that Sandra Kelly is our new one, and I look forward to working with her as well. And also, I just want to take this opportunity to say that Planning and Zoning is a rigorous commission. Everybody you see on this list works really hard. They put in 6 to 8 hours a month between meetings and reading the packet, and also trying to get up to speed with continuing ed, et cetera. So it's a big commitment, and I appreciate the work that everyone contributes to our commission. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about recent and current projects. The first was we discovered that or city staff discovered that there were property owners who wanted to construct ADUs on older lots that used to meet our standard lot size in some of the zones and don't currently, and they were just by a small amount. And so we eliminated the minimum lot size eligibility requirement to encourage more ADU construction among people who really are committed to doing it, and also to allow separate water and electrical meters, which helps the process. And this was approved by City Council in 2019, so several of you are already aware of this. We've been working on the use table amendment over probably the last several years, but we were asked by council to make recommendations specifically regarding educational services in downtown per the council's direction. And we also made a number of small adjustments to the use table after implementing it for the prior year and realizing we needed to clarify some things. So that's, and it's very useful. As an architect, I can say looking at that table now is so much easier when you want to work on a project. It's all on one page. We also worked on manufactured home and recreational vehicle park code and updated it in terms of eliminating the 6-month stay limit for RVs within the city limits, and revising to allow, to address affordable housing issues in the community, looking at revising the manufactured home park code to allow different types of housing, including tiny homes, which we also educated ourselves through about a bit through our continuing ed program in terms of tiny homes and the role they're playing in other communities throughout the country. And we consolidated, cleaned up the manufactured home park chapters, and this was all approved by council in January of 2020, so you're somewhat familiar with it. Now, an ongoing project is the subdivision code, and we've been working on updating the subdivision code. We actually had a subcommittee or a committee of interested stakeholders in the development community work with us to look at our proposals and get their feedback and take them into consideration. And we're restructuring the existing code of subdivisions and that ordinances and relocating it in the zoning code, and including issues such as lot line adjustments and lot divisions and subdivision plats. And I think most importantly, at least to me, is that we're also offering other options rather than the standard ordinance for subdivisions, including a conservation open space subdivision option and a traditional subdivision option. And we expect this to go to public hearing in April. So we'll get our initial round of feedback then. This would be an example of what a conservation subdivision is, where you're actually able to settle, allowed more density in exchange for setting aside a significant green area, green belt, or it could take a lot of different configurations. It could even be a centrally located sort of green in the middle of the community or along an important riparian corridor, et cetera. So it offers more options to developers. And they seem pretty excited about this option. And also the traditional subdivision example, which emulates more our neighborhoods that have been around Moscow for, 100 years or more, that it's more density but more connectivity and pedestrian-friendly environments that are encouraged by this type. Now, we are just beginning really looking at 5G, at small cell regulations, and there's been quite a bit of discussion throughout the community, quite a few presentations. I went to one last week given by a law professor at the University of Idaho. And I just want to tell the public right now that different commissions play different roles. That's your political body sitting up there. They're the ones who can push back if they don't want 5G. And I don't think that would be wise. But at any rate, it's not our job as planning and zoning to do that. We really have to be prepared, assuming that if it comes, we aren't caught without being prepared with some sort of ordinance in place where we can at least have a say in what happens visually in the public right of way, et cetera. So we've been trying to educate ourselves, move methodically, deliberately, but not too fast in terms of really being thoughtful about the process. But it's really not up to us to go sue the FCC or the FCC. We don't particularly want to subject the city to a legal suit. At least that's not our decision. We're volunteers. So I just want to make that clear that that the health issues also other commissions are involved. Historic preservation, I would hope, would be involved because we have two corridors. Two historic districts that would have a layout of 5G cell installations downtown and Fort Russell. And really we want, to have the aesthetic concerns addressed throughout the city, not just in those two neighborhoods. And sustainable environments would know more about the surrounding health issues. That's really, and educate city council on those types of issues. But it's really, ours has to do with land use. So, Anyway, we're also, federal regulations, a Supreme Court case came down through challenges to sign codes throughout in various cities, and we've been working on getting ours in compliance with federal regulations in that Supreme Court decision, where you really the ability to restrict content is gone. It's more of a size type regulation on signs. Might be able to add a few comments on that, but that's basically where we're headed. Does anybody have any questions?
Well, Wendy, I want to comment on the 5G thing, and you're absolutely correct. Planning and zoning, sure, you're going to be part of the conversation. And in our town, we have a conversation about lots of things, and that we're going to have a conversation about that as well. And how much we know, I don't know what will happen, other than like you spoke about the FCC, and you're correct the way I understand it and read it too. I think it's probably coming, but I know we're going to be able to have some conversations about some things, and that'll involve community as well. So I'm going to let Maureen, you had a question.
I just want to tell you that Rich Seaman is also coming to the next, to the March SEC meeting.
Oh, good. Yeah, he was he gave a public presentation to the League of Women Voters. Yeah, and it was very helpful in terms of understanding, what the regulations are in terms of at the federal level. And so, it was very educational for us, I think.
One of the things I always have liked, planning and zoning is dear to my heart because I was served on it for 5 years. I knew nothing about city government whatsoever, and I volunteered for it because I didn't know anything, and I really appreciate folks who get on that commission. Art at one time was on there. We were together, and Arthur was on there for a lot longer than I was. But one of the things I discovered was the exciting community that we lived in, and not only the diversity that there is, but boy, when there's something that's got some hot buttons to it, we do talk about it. So that's kind of exciting. But I appreciate all the people that are on our commissions, and you had 2 of them, because you're on also our chair for historic preservation
I haven't
as well.
figured out a way out of it.
Well, we never let Wendy go because we love her so much, because she does such a wonderful job, and she can't say no. And I thought for sure Mike was going to see her on there for another 20 years.
No,
So,
no,
but
no, I don't think so. If I'm still around in 20 years, I'll be happy with that.
More comments for Wendy? Brandy?
Yes.
Question, is the conservation subdivision what you were also sometimes calling a cluster subdivision, is that the same thing?
Yes. Yeah, it has a number of names. I mean, nationally, it's known as open space subdivision too. So there's all of that. And we haven't had a planning and zoning meeting with this big of an audience for a while, so we must be doing okay.
There was a few of them
when
that
things aren't going well.
There was a few of them that Art and I were in that had this many and more, so I'll just leave it at that. But
Right.
Wendy, thank you so much, and make sure the commission knows the appreciation for the mayor as well as the city council and the
I
work
sure
you
will.
guys do.
Thank you for this
Thanks,
opportunity.
Okay, with that, we are going to now talk about 2019 weeds. David Schott is around here somewhere as well. Hello, David. Item number 6, 2019 weed monitoring report. What's going on with the weeds in 2019? We're going to attack them in 2020 like we did 2019?
We're hoping so. Mayor Lambert, members of council, thank you for having me down tonight. It's my pleasure to go over our 29 weed monitoring report. So beginning in April of 2019, the Parks and Recreation Department began general observations and established photo points at Lillian Woodworth Ottness Park and Almond Asbury Llewellyn Park. I'm going to use Ottness Park and AAL Park just for ease in getting through the presentation here to monitor weeds in each park. So AAL Park is located on Resident Street while Lillian Woodworth Ottness Park is located on Asbury Street. So the observations were done approximately 3 weeks apart throughout the 2019 field season. I was looking for Canada thistle, which is a perennial weed, spreads by both root and seed. Dandelions, which is also root and seed. I was looking at white clover, not so much as a weed perspective, but it was out there and it's not turf, and so I recorded that as well. And then finally in July, I picked up some field bindweed, so I started recording that as well. I would note that Canada thistle and the field bindweed are both on the state agriculture's containment list. So why did we do this? We didn't manage either one of these parks with pesticides in 2019 as a pilot project. This was in response to concerns for pesticide use in parks. We've heard the public. We identified this in our updated Parks and Recreation Master Plan to develop a policy process to reduce pesticide usage within the city's public parks, properties, and urban forestry program. So we wanted to determine the effect of not using pesticides to control weeds. And finally, we only did control weeds through mechanical means out there. So hand pulling, mowing, string trimming. I also set up photo points. These are north, east, south, and west. These are just points that you repeatedly go to, and so you get a picture of over time on what the weed situation looks like out there. The general observations was me with 25 years of experience looking at weeds, going out there and ranking them as not observed, low infestation, moderate infestation, and heavy infestation. So bottom line, it's kind of what you would think. We found a slight increase in the weeds on the two parks and an increase in staff time to control those weeds through mechanical means. So running through the results here, this is the turf area of Otness Park. Canada thistle held pretty level at low. We did see an increase in clover, and we did see dandelions were kind of up and down. So within the creek area at Otness Park, Canada thistle remained heavy throughout the season. Clover increased, dandelions decreased, and again, I picked up field bindweed in July, and so I started recording that, and that increased throughout the summer as well. The tree lawn area, this is the area between the sidewalk and Asbury Road there. Clover in the tree lawn it wasn't observed, and then till August, and then we had a heavy concentration. Dandelions went from heavy to moderate. So AAL Park, we saw an increase in Canada thistle throughout the field season with a reduction in dandelions. So I pulled out our staff time. This is just mowing and trimming, or mowing and trimming hours. This is string trimming, so this is just standard maintenance. Over the past few years, no patterns or trends I could discern out of this, so I did have the crews start looking at additional hours. They went out specifically to knock back, say, the thistle in the creek outside of the mow and trim hours. So last year we had 8.5 hours to do that. This is an example of one of the photo points with north, east, south, and west. When you get this on the computer screen, you can zoom in and kind of keep a check on the weeds and whatnot. So this is the creek area on the left. You can see all the Canada thistle bolting here. We did go and string trim that and knock it all down. The planter bed at Otness Park, and then the tree lawn area with the dandelions. So our summary, we'd like to monitor both pilot programs again this year at both parks. I do have a concern with the Canada thistle in both these parks, especially in the turf area, AAL Park. It can start kind of creeping and start increasing in there. And so I just want to keep an eye on that. Same thing with the thistle along the creek at Otness Park. Like I said, we saw a slight increase in weeds generally and a slight increase in staff time. I would note community tolerance is fairly high. I only received one call about weeds on either one of the parks, and it wasn't really a complaint. It was just to let us know that the Canada thistle had bolted and we needed to get out there and do something about it, which we did. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
David, Canadian thistle, that steam machine that we have that kills weeds, the steamer, I don't know the technical word for that. Do we use that on the Canadian thistle?
I have not in parks thus far.
I wonder if it would work on that, because it seemed like the Canadian thistle are your biggest headache on this report you gave.
Yeah, and it'd be interesting to try. I got a suspicion it'll burn the top off, but it may not get down into the roots. That's one of the insidious parts about Canada thistle. is
Well, it
the
might
root
be one of
system.
those things, in order to get that, you may have to get it really early on.
Right.
In its growth stage and not, once it's got up there past a foot or something, may be kind of tough to do. So I was just curious about that.
I think we'll give it a try.
Okay, questions for David?
You beat me to it.
Oh, okay.
I have two
Randy?
questions for you, David. So I know at one point, a couple years ago, I was the liaison to SEC, and there was this little breakout group that was looking at the pesticides, and it was involving Parks and Rec. And so is that still in existence, and have you given this report to that group or back to the SEC? Or is that
Thank you
coming?
for the question, Counselor Sullivan. So yes, there was a group that broke out. We haven't met in quite some time. However, I did present this to the SEC in December, if I believe. Yep.
Okay.
So they're up to speed on what we're up to.
Okay. And then the other question is, do you think at some point, has there been any discussion, maybe in the SEC or within that group, at looking at alternative treatments other than the pesticides, but other, I don't know, chemicals is probably not the word I want to use, but other treatments that are not just mechanical, that are used elsewhere?
Right. Great question. I don't know of those conversations specifically in those circles, but I know there has been a lot of conversations among staff of different best management practices. You got your chemical, you got your biologicals, you've got your mechanical, and having those work together, and just having a good, healthy soil, good, healthy turf will bring that, the weeds will get choked out. So we do have those conversations, and yeah, hopefully we can win the battle out there, at least keep up with it.
All right, thanks.
Other questions for David? Well, David, thank you. We look forward to the 2020 report,
All right.
21.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, with that, we are going to move on to item number 7, Moscow Volunteer Fire Department EMS report. We have Fire Chief Brian Nickerson with us, as well as EMS Division Chief Debbie Carskellen here with us this evening to talk about this report. And one of the things, while we're waiting for David to get done there, I'll make mention that the last few council meetings, we've had some information from PAC EMS. One of those things that I'm interested in, I think this council up here is interested in too. We were told that the 911 service is broken, so we're very interested in hearing about that. So Debbie, without further ado, I'll let you take off.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, City Council, for allowing me the time to come talk to you about this. So we are the Moscow Volunteer Fire Department. A lot of us are here. I am Debbie Carskellen. I'm the EMS Division Chief. I am a paramedic. I have been a member of this department since 2002 as a volunteer. I became a member of the paid staff in June of 2017. So we currently, our agency, who we are, we have 3 fire stations, 3 fire engines, 1 ladder truck, 4 ambulances, and 2 paramedic response vehicles. Our ambulance company has 46 basic level EMTs that are certified nationally and licensed in Idaho at the BLS level. And then we have 15 ALS paramedic level providers. BLS stands for Basic Life Support. So this is a floor level certification. And in addition to that, the state of Idaho allows some other optional modules, if you will. That's what they're termed. And one of those, all of our EMTs are trained in acquiring 12-lead EKGs and administering intramuscular injections. And then the other thing we offer at the state, it's a state optional module level, is a IV and venous sampling and some supraglottic airways IO type things. And that is something that allows our EMTs at the basic level to increase their expertise and their abilities, increase our services. And then ALS stands for Advanced Life Support. So to become a paramedic, you have to be an EMT for at least a year and then apply to an accredited program. And it's about an 18-month program that you go through classwork and internships and clinicals. And then you have to pass the national exam. So our paramedics have been providing documented 24/7, 365 coverage at the ALS level since 2016. Our paramedics not only respond to calls in town, but we also provide ALS support as requested to our partner volunteers that are out in Latah County. So that would be Troy, Genesee, Deary, Potlatch, Julietta, Kendrick. Those calls outside of Moscow are further away, and so what that allows is not only does it assist those basic life support volunteer agencies to call for help when they have high acuity calls, they have more critical patients, but it also allows for our paramedics to get more experience at that ALS level. Sometimes in the city of Moscow, when you're on shift, you may not get an ALS level call during your shift. Somebody else might get them, so you have to work hard to maintain your skills here in Moscow. And so that going out into Latah County allows those paramedics more opportunity. They have longer transport times, and so therefore they have patient care for a lot longer as well, because we have a pretty close trip to the hospital in town. It's a short response and a short transport. So our dispatchers, so we contract with Whitcomb, and the way that we are activated is Whitcomb is trained in emergency dispatch. So as someone calls in, they question the caller. They continue to ask questions to discover the severity of the call, essentially. And then they give a designation Alpha through Echo. And as you can see on the next slide, if you give you the right one, Alpha would be a non-emergency level call where maybe that's a patient that has fallen and can't get up, but they might or might not have an injury. These are all based on life threats. And then an echo response.
There goes a bunch of them right
There
there.
they go.
So I was kind of wondering about that, what would happen if we got a call in the middle of this council meeting? Well,
Their
now we know,
response time
ladies
is
and
quick.
gentlemen, there
Yep.
they went to take care of business.
There they go. And then it goes down Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo, and an echo is immediate life threat. Essentially, it could be CPR in progress. And so those designations are given to us as as apparatus starts to roll, we get more information from dispatch on what kind of level of call it is. And then they dispatch out what kind of resources we've lined out based on the call severity and the life threat. So as we're dispatched, we have a tiered response. We have an engine crew that always has an EMT on the engine. And during their shift time, they respond to all calls. So there's an EMT headed out the door with the engine. And then you might possibly have a paramedic. It depends on the level of the call. And as those resources start to arrive, let's say it's an Alpha, but it's a patient that appears to have a broken hip. Well, I certainly don't want my grandmother laying on the floor with a broken hip and not getting some pain meds if she wants them. And so an Alpha level is a non-emergency call, and it's all based on life threat. But as the resources start to arrive, if they see it's something that we know we would want a higher level, they can activate that, and they have that discretion to do so. And so our tiered response is there to, as we start to go to call, because the call is only dispatched to what the person tells the dispatcher over the phone is what they can use. And sometimes what we are dispatched to is not what's actually going on that call. So as I said, all our crews have the ability to activate more resources and to add additional response levels to their call. Most of the time, the other thing that we are blessed with here is the Moscow Police Department responds on calls. We train with them. They have AEDs and first aid kits in their cars that we help them maintain, and we train them on and train with them on CPR and AED use. We rotate through CPR with them, and then when they're not needed, they release if they're not needed. But one thing that they're very good at is not only that, but assisting with ventilations. They'll grab equipment for us. They'll get medical histories, names, date of birth, gather up medications for us, help move furniture, however we need it. They're there to help, and they're invaluable in our response team. And then the other thing that our personnel are all arranged, so we have them in shifts. And so our shifts are also Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, and Echo. So a shift, a crew, is assigned on duty 1 day every 5 days. And so with that, and our tiered response, these crews, as our Alpha, that kind of tells you what some of our tiered response is, but as we, our calls tone out, the engine crew on duty, and that's the scheduled personnel that we have, or that crew that is on shift that day responds. And they are asked, and this is something that we're working through, but they're asked to call a full crew, and those are the key words to tell Whitcomb to stop toning, essentially. They need to say those key words over the air for Whitcomb to know that they don't need to keep asking for more resources, as you will. Then after that first tone, if they haven't declared a full crew, or we need more resources, we've decided we need more, then it's open for others to fill in, and off-duty shift, however you want to word it, those people, if they're available, they can go on that call. And then the engine crew, like I said, they respond on calls, and we use them frequently as drivers or extra hands in the back. There's an EMT on board. One of our engines is has a paramedic on board now that just finished paramedic school, and so we also have that potential out there. So when it comes to our agency, we are always working on quality improvement. It's something that we are continually looking for. How can we do better, and what do we need to look for in the future? Is there something we need to change and look to in order to improve the service to the city and to our community? And so one of the things that we do is that we review incidents, including patient care reports and data. I do that continually. That's my daily job, is to look at past calls and give feedback to the crews, and especially when it comes to report writing. We also encourage our crews to debrief after each call and to discuss how it went, and is there something that we can do better? Is there something we can change? And that includes the engine crew that responded with them. How can we all work better together? Each shift is assigned a crew coordinator, so we call them, it's basically for span of control or chain of command, if you will. And that person is a shift commander, is how we give them that power. And as they are working through with their crew, we ask them to communicate with their crews and do a whole bunch of things, and that includes, so EladTech is a new system that we purchased. It's a software program that is not only scheduling, but information. So we can put forms on there for truck checks, but we can also send messages out to crews. We can send them to the whole agency. They can download these forms that they need. We can put training on there. There's lots of things we haven't even started using this program can do, and we can ask them to build for us. But right now, one of our biggest points is to try to create a schedule of availability. And we're asking our crew coordinators to work through that and ask their crews to do that at least 5 days in advance, so that the other volunteers can see where we have some gaps. Do we need to adjust schedules? Can they pick up a call, like a scheduled shift during this time? And so it is a process that we're working on, but we bought the software, people have committed to using it, and that's what we're trying to go through. So the other thing is like I said, the feedback, quality improvement trainings, and then they can handle the personnel issues that are at a lower level. And if they need to take it up the chain of command, then that would be where it starts, and then it goes from there. And if they have equipment supply needs, there's so many things that we ask these crew coordinators to just kind of keep in mind, and to listen to their crews talk about what it is as another resource to us to get more things and change training and processes. So one of the things also with these fire crews that we've kind of created, and this is something new for our agency, and it's more organized, I should say, in this 2020 year. And we set up a shift training that every month crews are assigned a very specific topic. They're given some scenarios. They're given there's some articles for them to read. There's things to present and to work through. And then they arrange food and they communicate when that training is going to happen to not only their crew, but the whole department and also the engine crews, so that hopefully throughout the month, if a volunteer doesn't have time on their shift to do that training, they can go to someone else's training, and that way everybody's getting the same message about whatever that topic is for the month. And then it gives them the chance to, as we grow with numbers, it gives them a chance to meet people who aren't on their shift and to bond, hopefully, and create a more concise team. So far it's working, people like it. The one thing with our specific calls, we work very closely with Dr. Nick Garrett. He's our medical director. He's here tonight. And there are very specific calls that we send to Dr. Garrett to review. But then he also, and to provide feedback to us, we set up trainings with him to go over calls, especially at the paramedic level, talk about what could we do better, do we have needs at the paramedic level, but also at the BLS. And then the other thing is the QA, QI type stuff. Dr. Garrett has the ability to get into our patient care report program and look at any call he ever wants to look at. So if he hears an ER doc or he sees a patient in the ER, frequently almost all the ER docs are coming and talking to us and finding out, what did you see? Because this is what the patient's telling me, and trying to create the whole picture. But then also to help us learn from those calls is to get some feedback on, did we do a great job? Did we make a difference? The volunteers want to hear that. But then also, is there something we can work on to do better? And then what was the final outcome? But he does have that ability. He can look at any call on our reports and provide feedback at his discretion. We report to the State of Idaho EMS Bureau. We have on file with them our formulary, our protocols, our medical supervision plan, and they come and inspect us yearly for our license, and we provide them what apparatus we have in service and what do we say and we're doing. So that is a yearly license renewal requirement. And then the other thing that we do is data information is shared. So the numbers that we are coming up with is shared with our volunteers so that they can see what numbers don't lie. Data's there for them to look at and to work on quality improvement. So we have some benchmark response times. So this is NFPA and the Washington Administrative Code. I just want to say the Moscow Volunteer Fire Department has not adopted a standard for response times, but nor has the state of Idaho.
That acronym, NFPA,
Sorry.
what is that?
National
Debbie, for us?
Fire Protection Association.
And that's a national organization you're talking about now?
It is. So it is a benchmark. Essentially, it's goals. There's something that you need to aspire to. So it's out there, but if you prescribe to NFPA, you must follow all rules that they have, 100%. It's not something that, we do look at NFPA numbers frequently. That's something that Chief Nickerson talks about a lot, is NFPA, because there's standards for everything, safety, you name it, it's out there through NFPA. But we have not adopted any response time, like response time standards. But it is a guideline, like I said, it's a goal for us to try to meet. And then this Washington Administrative Code, that is, obviously it's something specific to the state of Washington, but it also gives us something else to look at. For Moscow, in these graphs here, Moscow is 6,861 square miles, and our current census population is estimated at 25,766. So that would put us in the urban category. The two sample standards that are listed here, they have 3,755 people per square mile. So these urban standards, they have two different demographic definitions. And this, again, the standards referenced here include NFPA, the National Fire Protection Association, and that State of Washington WAC. So in NFPA 1720, it outlines standards for volunteer agencies for fire and EMS, but EMS is addressed in it's kind of a side note almost, the standards speak heavily to fire response. And regardless, these response times for the standard it's 9 minutes and you meet the objective in 90% of the time. So, our neighbors in Washington State that have this WAC it's in their state code, and it's a requirement for them, for their responses. And there's 2 levels for aid service, which is kind of, that more equates to Moscow's EMT response with our fire engines and our paramedic apparatus. And then there's a separate response requirement for ambulance services specifically. And those numbers are 8 and 10 minutes and 80% of the time, so. And then these are our response times. I want to note that these include transfers, medical rendezvous, and rural fire district responses. So we average 99 medical rendezvous. So those are the paramedics heading out to the outside agencies, could be as far as Elk River. For example, we had a call this last summer that was a logging accident way up a logging road outside of Elk River. So that was a more than 1 hour response time just to get to that scene. It was one of those days that the helicopter could land, but it couldn't be close because it's up a logging road. And so just note that these times do have, they have the extras of that. So these are all our calls for an entire year for the past 3 years. The fire engines typically have the fastest response times when you're considering all calls together. And this is due mostly to the fact that the engines only respond in town. They don't go out into the rural. We have a rural fire district for that, and they do not respond on rendezvous and out on transfers. So the average call times are the most representative, really, of the true city limit response because of that. The other ones have all those extras calculated in. Each engine has at least, like I said, 1 EMT care provider on board, and so they're establishing patient care within the time frame. And then additionally, we allow them to go through optional modules, which increases their ability to provide care. So, and then our paramedic response includes, like I said, their rendezvous and rural fire district responses as well. So going out, out and nearing road, or, some of those county houses that are out there are not a fast response, up on the mountain, things like that. So, and then the ambulance response is listed and again, these times reflect transfers, medical rendezvous, and rural fire district responses. So we do have 4 ambulances, and they're ready to respond at all times. But that's our beautiful station. I would say we've had some questions brought up, concerns about whether or not what our abilities are and whether we're failing or not. We are not. We have very dedicated volunteers who are very passionate about what they do. We are not perfect, but we certainly are looking and trying to do better and to provide the best service for our community. These are our people. Many of us have friends, family, loved ones that we are invested in. So that, Nick has a letter to read.
Debbie, I got a couple of questions. Sorry, Doctor, we'll get to you here in just a minute. I got a couple of questions I want to ask you. And you talked about, we have 15 paramedic members
Yes, sir.
that can handle any of these crises, and we got 46 EMT members as well. Now, is that 15 in addition to the 46?
Yes, sir.
So we have a total of 61. And some of those 46, I'm guessing, are in training to eventually become?
Well, we actually just added, I believe, 6 more who will be in training. The rest are all up and running now.
So
Yeah.
this training is
Basic level.
This training is ongoing.
Yes, sir.
And I got a couple of questions. You spoke about 5 different levels of response, alpha being the least critical. I would consider everything critical, but that's the least critical, and it works on its way on down to the other things, and I'm not going to get into all 5 of those. But how has that worked very well for you? I mean, any issues with that? You see?
I think for the most part, it's always a process. Like I said, the dispatch is only as good as the information given to the dispatcher. They are taking the calls and they're trying very hard to get a notification to us early. And what that means, the trade-off is sometimes we don't have the whole story. We just know a little bit of it. And then as they're getting more information, they will update us and upgrade us or downgrade us as needed based on the information they've gotten. But it's certainly, I mean, nothing in this world's perfect. But that's partially why we have that tiered response, is so that we give everybody the power to activate more people or more resources as needed, if seeing it, hearing it. A lot of times we're scanning the police officers or Latah County as well and hearing the information they're giving from scene, and that gives us information that we can spin up or spin down, so.
I've got another question to ask you, Debbie, before we get to the doctor. You talked a little bit about the EMS Bureau that comes in yearly and inspects the books and inspects you guys. And the reason I'm asking these questions is because most of us really don't know how it works, so I'm
Right.
just fishing here to ask questions. But anyway, it seems to me like, do they inspect response times? Is there a criteria for that? And
They do not, no.
They do not. So what is it they inspect to qualify?
A lot of it is your equipment, making sure that not only your equipment, but your personnel, and that you're documenting what you're supposed to document. We are mandated to report certain trauma criteria and different bits of information from our patient care reports. But they're typically coming in and looking to make sure that we have the ambulances that are running, like we said, and that they have the equipment in it that's required, and that we have a process in place to restock and the ability to cover calls. Do we have a plan in place for coverage? And do we have a plan in place with our doctor to review what we're doing and make sure that we're doing, following protocols and responding appropriately?
Okay, let's get the doctor up and let him reach. I'm sorry about that. I was a little windier than usual, but, which is not a surprise. Then we'll come back to you, Maureen, and so we'll ask more questions. Welcome, sir.
Hi, thank you guys so much, Mayor Lambert, City Council. Sorry about my attire. I didn't realize I'd be speaking tonight, actually.
You are Dr.?
Dr. Nicholas Garrett.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Garrett.
I'm the trauma director for Griffin Medical Center, and I'm also the medical director for Moscow Ambulance Company, as well as several other agencies within Latah County. The letter I'm going to read is from Moscow Emergency Physicians, which is a PLLC. It's the local group of ER docs that have partnered together to provide 24-hour coverage to Gritman's emergency department. So the letter is not strictly from me. It's really from our group of physicians that staff the ER 24 hours a day. So, dear Moscow City Council, Moscow Emergency Physicians PLLC, or MEP, is a group of dedicated emergency physicians that provides 24-hour coverage to Griffin Medical Center's emergency department. As a group, we have provided emergency services to Griffin for over 20 years. In addition to providing walk-in emergency care to our community, we also receive and care for all emergency transfers from the community via the Moscow Ambulance Company, as well as several other agencies that are represented here. Our group became aware recently that Debbie Karskalen will be presenting to the Moscow City Council regarding the operations of the Moscow Ambulance Company on March 2nd, 2020, during a regularly scheduled council meeting. The purpose of this letter is to support and defend the Moscow Ambulance Company with regards to their preparedness, professionalism, and dedication to our community. For the past 22 years, MEP has served alongside the dedicated volunteers of the Moscow Ambulance Company, and we are honored to have the opportunity to work with such amazing people every day. As a professional organization of physicians, we have never doubted the capability, responsiveness, or professionalism of the dedicated volunteers. As accepting physicians working in the emergency department, we have the highest expectations for the EMS personnel working in our community. Patient care, timely transport, and professionalism are our utmost priorities. The Moscow Ambulance Company has never given us any reason to doubt their capabilities, and we are continually impressed with their responsiveness and patient-centered focus. Behind any great organization is a great leader, and we couldn't be more impressed with the dedicated work and tireless ambition of EMS Chief Debbie Karskalen. Much more important than winning national awards for her efforts, she is singularly focused on the pre-hospital patient care of our community and developing a sustainable volunteer force of highly trained staff here with us today. Her efforts have created a volunteer agency that can compete nationally for their expertise in medical knowledge, fiscal responsibility, and dedication to our community. We hope you receive this letter of support with the intent it was written. We look forward to working with the Moscow Ambulance Company for years to come. Sincerely, Moscow Emergency Physicians, signed Dr. Randy Klepfer, Dr. Guillermo Modad, Dr. John Brown, Dr. Lauren Brogus, Dr. Sarah Lawrence, Dr. Craig White, and myself, Dr. Nicholas Garrett.
Okay, anybody have questions for the doctor? Maureen, you had a question, but let's,
I think either you can answer, but I think you probably can answer it. When they come with patients in an ambulance, do you get a report
Yes.
from them, and it's a written report?
There are written reports. Typically, usually how most emergency departments work is you get sometimes much more information even just from getting a sort of a feel of what the scene was like, what other family members had told you. And there is an official report, but there's, as all things in medical care, there's a lot of things that go unwritten, because to write everything would be a dissertation on every patient encounter. So we have a very strong working relationship with EMS, and they don't hesitate to bring up issues to us in the ER, things they may have seen on scene that may affect either patient care or safety of a patient at home. And conversely, we have no issue asking them follow-up questions or giving them feedback, and or bringing up issues that may arise to myself or other members of the staff.
So basically, someone from EMS spends a little time talking to the ER docs, emergency medicine docs at some point.
Typically, sometimes we're busy, and so they'll give a report to one of the nurses that's working in the emergency department, but on very sick or trauma patients, there's typically a one-on-one interaction.
Brandy, yeah.
In cases where the ER physician determines that this patient is not going to be admitted, but is going to be transferred to a higher level of acuity, and they need a transport, who do you call to do that?
We have multiple options now. LifeFlight is our critical care transport in the community for helicopter and advanced level ground support. PACT EMS is another option that we've utilized in the past. And then recently, we've been able to use Moscow Ambulance Company as well in certain capacities for transport. It depends on weather, depends on how far they're going, it depends on the time of day and which agency is available. Sometimes LifeFlight's not available, sometimes PACT EMS is available, and sometimes our own ambulance company is not available, so.
So if LifeFlight was not needed based on your evaluation and ground transport was all right, you've had, it sounds like you're fine with whichever service can provide the ground transport, or you've been satisfied with
Satisfied
both
with?
services? You mentioned the Moscow and PACT as.
It depends. Depends on the patient, it depends on the situation that's going on, and it depends. Yeah.
Other questions for the, this is a question you may or may not be able to ask or answer, Doctor, but we heard, like I said, a couple of weeks ago that our 911 system is broken here, flawed or whatever. Do you see any issue with that as an emergency doctor?
No.
Okay, none. Okay, thank you. Questions for Debbie?
A question for Debbie.
Thank you, Doctor.
Can I just say one more thing, since you kind of opened the door there? I'm originally from Moscow. I grew up here. Some of you might have crowns from my dad, who was a dentist.
Which one was he?
What?
I
Jim Garrett?
Oh, no.
Yeah,
He's off the hook.
yeah.
But my kid does.
Okay. And I spent about 15 years on the East Coast. I actually trained in Miami through the Jackson Health System in Mount Sinai. So I've had an opportunity to witness multiple ambulance companies, mostly for-profit or not-for-profit, but paid through city, these very large, City of Miami Beach, Fort Lauderdale. And I can tell you that the service that the Moscow Ambulance Company and the greater agencies that are in this room represented is really second to none. It's really incredible what they've done for our small community. So
Thank you.
they can compete nationally.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, Maureen, you had a question for Debbie?
That was a great compliment for you all. So during breaks, when we don't have students in town, how is the volunteer fire department staffed?
Similarly, typically what we do is we send out information asking who's going to be around, who's available. That's kind of what LadTech is hoping to address, is that people can go in there and we can see what kind of resources we have available. Unfortunately, we do have, I believe out of those 40-some BLS EMTs, 25 of them are students. But what we did is just recently we started focusing on recruiting community members again. to try to bridge that gap. But what it means is those that stay in town have to step up their calls a little bit. They have to make themselves more available. And we do have that tiered response, but we have paramedics on duty, we have command officers, we have fire personnel that can drive to try to fill the gaps.
You also talked about crews, and I'm fairly new, and I don't think I know as much about this as some others may. So you have a crew commander for every shift?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
And how many people are on a shift?
Well, it depends on how many people we have. So we have 5 shifts, right now we have, well, again, we just added 6, but 52, let's say, 52 EMTs. So that's 10 EMTs plus some to each shift. So we just we don't add shifts, we just add personnel to that shift, if that makes sense. And then the paramedics are scheduled. So there's always a paramedic scheduled on 24/7. And they are always available as a resource. If they're not on duty, we now have 2 paramedic vehicles to try to help bridge some of that as well. And if a paramedic's available, they can be the secondary or the backup paramedic. And because frequently we have calls going on at the same time. And so they can split off. But when we have those deltas and echoes, which are the high acuity calls, there's a lot of work to be done. And it's super awesome to see another paramedic's face when you've got a lot of work to do alongside. So those are options that we're offering. We bought that second paramedic vehicle to try to open that door so that they can take it to work or home. And maybe they can't go on every single call, but they might be able to listen and drop their kids with their husband or their, spouse or however, and go on a call, so.
And since you've been in the business for so long, are there times when we don't have enough people to be able to staff?
We have not missed a call. We cover our calls. I would say we have asked for mutual aid from Pullman twice that I recall. And one of them was the awful shooting in 2015. And what happened is we didn't know when that was going to end, and we knew we had patients all over the place. And so Pullman came and sat with an ambulance over by Walmart just in case. And then another one was we had a 2-car head-on right in front of the mall that had 4 patients, and 3 of them were very, very injured. And we had every ambulance there. And then there was a fall with a possible knee injury across town. So we activated Pullman, and then we're able to clear a paramedic, and we sent a command officer over there to make sure that patient was okay. And then we cleared a paramedic crew to go address that, and we canceled Pullman, so.
Okay, Sandra.
And I don't know if this is a question for you or not, but I know that periodically Whitcomb suffers some staffing issues as well. And are you feeling like you're getting your calls and your updates like you need to get the right people out there, or is that an issue on their end as well?
We have our times. I think in life you always want more information. You would love to know what exactly you're headed to, but that's not our world. Again, the information's only as good as what's given to them over the phone. I do believe that they're working very hard to address what's going on, and they're trying their best. We're asking people to be very patient with them. But the bottom line is we know there's a call that needs to be filled, and we know we need to go there. And sometimes the information they give us just tells us, do we need to roll a paramedic? Do we need to go lights and sirens? We have an engine and an ambulance going to calls anyway. A lot of times if it just sounds like it might be something that a paramedic should go to, then they roll. And if they can hand off to the other crew so that they get that experience and it's not a paramedic level call, then they get what they need and they hand it off and they clear and they're ready for another call. So I don't know if I have a straight answer
Sure.
for you. But
I don't know that you could, but thank you. I appreciate
Did you have
that.
another question, Brady? You have some-
Yeah, thanks. building off of what Maureen asked, so currently, what are your options if you find yourself in a stretch of time or in a situation that requires mass response, more than the 2 ambulances?
More than
Or-
4? We have
or-
4.
Okay, more than 4.
2 paramedics.
So either that situation or where it's a time where you just don't have enough people. What are your options right now? Is it just
We have
calling
mutual aid
Pullman?
agreements with Pullman, Potlatch, Troy, Deary, Genesee, JK. We have the resources and the abilities to mobilize them to come in. Yeah, it would be mutual aid agreements if we had something big going on. You know, there's lots of work to be done. I mean, Gritman's gonna be busy if we were to have a mass casualty, if that's what you want to say. Gritman's gonna be busy and they're gonna need to move patients out of there to clear for what's coming in. So there's work for everybody to be done.
Debbie, it sounded like you had only 3 of those instances in the last 4 years, so it's not very often.
2.
Is that correct? 2 in 4 years?
One was 2015.
Or 5 years maybe now? So it's a rare event.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I mean, I know it's not as simple as this, but I mean, in thinking about those situations and knowing that are other paramedics in another company here that would be able to be dispatched, but currently they can't be, right? And that, as I said, I know it's more complicated than that, but it just, in a real emergency situation that's beyond the capacity, which I know is very rare and hopefully will never happen.
I agree
but,
with you on that. The one thing
is-
that the state has made, the State EMS Bureau has made a statement on, if there is something big going on, all resources are going to be mobilized, and there are not going to be sanctions. It's about patient care and doing the best for everybody. So a mutual aid agreement signature, yes, it addresses the rules and how people are going to respond and with what, and when we ask, or, what do you want? Typically, let's say a fire. We have a wildland fire that Potlatch asks for us to, they will very specifically say, can you send a tender? So a big tank of water on wheels, essentially. So your mutual aid agreements are very specific, typically, of the resources that you ask for. But when it comes down to taking care of our communities and the county, do I think, currently, and I don't want to drag Deary into this, but they go into Elk River all the time, which is Clearwater County. And they do not necessarily have all that lined out, but they're taking care of that community because they're asked to. And so, we've gone clear up into Benoit County to help Tensed out because Potlatch has been dispatched there. It's not on paper. It's communities taking care of communities, so.
So your mutual aid agreements are generally with other volunteer services?
Yes, they are. We do have one with, I believe, with Clearwater Paper. A lot of it's fire service, but Lewiston Fire, Pullman Fire. But that is for EMS as well as fire.
And then the doctor, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, didn't know you weren't done. Go ahead.
We'll give her a break so she can rest her jaws here a little. Maureen, what did you have another one?
Okay, did I understand correctly from the doctor that we've started doing transport from one hospital to the next as well?
We've been doing it all along. It's just not our primary goal.
So if you're available, then you do it, and if you're not available,
Correct.
then
If they
maybe it's
call
somebody
us and
else.
we're available,
Okay.
then we'll take it. But that's not our primary. Our primary goal is 911 in the city and the county.
Well, one thing I will say, and I've been the mayor for 7 years now, and I have never had, and I work closely with Gritman, and I'm with Cara Best and others there as well, not necessarily the doctors in emergency, although I was there once myself. Thank God, I'm still here to talk about it, so I think I got great service. But it doesn't seem to me, I haven't heard a single thing, a single complaint from our sheriff, our chief of police, the State Patrol or Gritman, our medical facilities here. I've never heard one single thing. And I think that is a compliment to everybody that's a first responder in this room. I mean, that's a big deal, and the doctor right there said that we're second to none here nationally, and I think that's a big deal for everybody in this room to be very, very proud of. And one thing I will say is, as the mayor or as the council up here, geez, we started getting into nitpicky things, and that's a drill or an exercise. I think realistically, things look pretty doggone good. I think PAC does a good job with what they do. I think our EMS, our guys here in the city, through Debbie's leadership as well as Chief Nickerson's, do a wonderful job. And so, I'm not stopping. There's more questions want to be answered, but I just wanted to make that comment.
Yeah,
Go ahead
yeah.
and bring.
So, I mean, I think I would agree that we're very fortunate to have, and the fact that volunteers do this is very amazing. And I think many communities, that's a challenge. And Moscow, all of you out here who are a part of it have done it very well, and you should be very proud of that. I appreciate the information with the response time, because that's one of the things that has been coming to us, frankly, as the question or the concern. And what do you think about the NFPA standards, their guidelines? And do you have a goal at some point of trying to adopt something just for your kind of criteria, so you can track how you're doing? Are you meeting that? Are you getting close? Are you getting farther away from it? What's the trend, and are things getting better, or are they declining, and being able to identify if changes need to happen and what those should be?
Well, I would say that whether we adopt them or not, again, like I said with NFPA, the way that it is, if you adopt it, then you follow every single rule that they have, which isn't a bad thing, but some of it, especially for a volunteer agency, and it might sound like an excuse, but it's not. It's just not possible to meet some of those requirements. Some of it is like these astronomical training hours, which we're all for training, but we also have lives, and, our volunteers have to work a job outside of this job. But just because we don't adopt them doesn't mean we haven't been looking at them. Since Chief Nickerson got here, we have, and I would think Gary would attest to this, we hear NFPA all the time. Mm-hmm. Every standard that applies to us, we're looking at it for safety, but also response time. We're constantly looking at what we are doing and trying to, how do we get the volunteers, to shrink down their time from their job to the station, to get the ambulance out the door, kind of things. And always looking at, do we need to make some changes? Do people need to stay in the station during peak hours? There's lots of things we're looking at to try to address using statistics and data. But
I guess I meant more not necessarily adopt, and I'll say this just for the chief too, though, but so not necessarily adopting all their standards, but just setting your own internal goal for what you want your department's response time to be. Whatever you think would be what you want to achieve, just setting something internally. I'm just curious if.
Well, the thing about the standard is there's not a whole lot of organizations around the country that actually adopt all the standards, because it's a rule following. Each line item you start to skip. It's a guideline, and it's everything that people shoot for. Whether you're aware of it or not, the 2 fire trucks we just built is compliant with an FPA 1901, even though we did not adopt that. So everything is compliant to that. In regards to the response times, we have had discussions over the last several years, actually, since I've been here, and I like the NFPA because it is a standard, it's a guide. It's a benchmark for us to continue to shoot for. Again, some of the standards are very high. The training hours for the fire side especially, all those type of things are challenges for anybody in any organization. That's whether you're paid or volunteer, it doesn't matter, it's that high. So the goal is to look at these benchmarks, which we've been looking at for some time, is to continue to strive for that, because that's the national average, that's the national standard. Because ours would probably be a little bit higher if we just did an internal one. because of the way we function, the way we operate. But we look at our professional volunteer organization as one of the best. We're the busiest volunteer fire department in Idaho. And so to meet those benchmarks, that's what we try to strive for. Yeah, sometimes we do fall a little short. But at the end of the day, we provide the best service, and these people in here are the ones that provide it. And I can honestly say that I'm proud to be with these guys and gals. So, but that's a national goal, and that's what we're going to continue to shoot for, however we can. And we've been talking about alternatives. We throw things on the wall and see if they stick. And we take things back down and throw other things back up. So we continually evolve and try to figure out ways and other opportunities for volunteers and all that. So, and we have some other exciting things coming here in the next probably few months.
Well, and I think that what Debbie was saying about looking at, and the questions are really just to better understand how you're assessing performance and ideas for how you could, say, cut down on the response time. So you mentioned some things that you're discussing. I'm really glad to hear that. And I mean, I think one of the things that would be a challenge with the volunteers is just the time to get them out the door, you know?
Put your keys with your shoes. I just said this the other day, didn't I? Put your keys with your shoes, put your shoes by the door, put your pants by your shoes.
That sounds kind of like a mother telling her kid getting ready for school.
Pretty much, yeah. And brush your teeth.
One of the other things for me is the one where you talked about the average time, because we do a lot of work also for the counties, the county here, such as Troy and Potlatch. Actually, it may be interesting to separate out your response time in the city versus the county, because
Yeah.
at some point, I think that when you merge the county with the city, it kind of distorts what happens in the city.
For sure.
So that may be something that would, I mean, like, I looked at that and I thought, wow, 15 minutes. And the answer is, once you start talking about it, it takes an hour to get out there, that changes the entire dynamic.
And we did try to find those numbers. We were trying to run reports to see if we could filter some of that out, and it takes some digging to get the data points changed. And the program so our Whitcom times, when they type everything into Spillman, every time they make an entry, it sends the times, like in ambulance calls en route, it sends the times through a bridge into emergency reporting, which is what we use for our data. And so then, but trying to find the report to pull what we wanted out of that was not, it was a process that we just had to stop trying to get today. And it doesn't mean we won't keep trying to get the information, because I agree with you. And then we just need to save those reports, because sometimes we find them. There's a billion reports that you can run. We find them, but then we can't find them again, so.
But yeah, I think that would be really useful too, just for you internally, to be able to give that feedback here within the city. Here's how our response times were this month, and here's how they were last month, just so everyone involved has a better understanding of what their goal is, and if they're achieving it, and if not, can contribute to how do we get there. But it does become a little difficult when they're all averaged together to know exactly what's happening within the city.
The one thing, the way we capture our data, we share our record system with the rural fire district. So they're automatically populated in our same system. So that does skew numbers. And we're going to try to find ways to, number one, separate that out, and then anything else, like the rendezvous or the transfers, maybe that there's just some alternatives that we got to look at. So when we started that program 5 years ago, that was the goal. Let's have one system for both organizations to use, make it easy for the volunteers to do reports and stuff. And now we're just going to take a revisit to it and see what we can do. So.
Do you have one last question on the response times things? Do you have data on the actual dispatch time?
We do.
Okay.
Like from call to dispatch?
Yes.
Yeah.
We do.
Okay.
There's a standard for that as well.
Yep.
So you know what that
We
is,
absolutely
because
do.
that wouldn't really change whether it's within the
Doesn't
city or
change.
without. It's just how quick are they out on the
At
road,
getting
right?
us the message.
And you have that,
Yes,
okay.
we have that data.
If I may.
Gary?
The chief and I have talked about response time since the day he walked in the door. And as the doctor talked about, we're talking about quality of care here. Debbie's talked about that a couple of times tonight. And response times are a good check on that quality of care. However, we're a small professional department of paid people, and keeping those sort of statistics takes a lot of time. And Debbie can't be reviewing EMS reports and working on quality of care if she's constantly crunching numbers. Now, the chief's been working on putting that data from Spillman or from dispatch into Spillman so it comes over into the reporting software. That's not been without its challenges, and I suspect it'll get easier as they move along. However, the ultimate goal here is not necessarily meeting an artificial NFPA standard. The goal is to provide the best patient care possible and deliver people to the hospital in as good a shape as they can get. And I think you've heard from Dr. Garrett that that goal is being achieved.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah,
no doubt about it.
I
No doubt.
agree with that. Sometimes response time, though, is what's going to make the difference between them arriving in the hospital in good condition or not. So I think that having an understanding of exactly what your response time is just important.
Sure.
Okay, well, good job. Thank you very much, Debbie and Chief, and for all the EMS people out there, first responders, thank you so much for being in this wonderful community. Thank you, Dr. Garrett, for the wonderful job that Gritman does to keep us all going. It's very nice, and thank you for the presentation. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to take a 5-minute break. We will return at 8:30. Yeah.
I'm not.
You know?
What's that?
You said that yes. You're wrong. Okay, folks, we are alive and we are back, and so we're going to be starting here real soon. Let's see, we are going to go to item number 8. Lost my train of thought here, and it is downtown parking study request for qualification. Bill Belknap, you have this floor, sir.
Wait till the door.
Yep.
Just give it one moment to get the
Yep.
doors closed.
Yeah, we got to close the doors so that. I think we're very, very fortunate.
Okay.
The services we have here, everything.
Thank you, Your Honor, members of the council tonight. As you are aware, during the preparation of the current FY20 budget for the current fiscal year, the City Council appropriated $45,000 in funding to hire a consulting firm to perform an assessment and recommendations related to the city's downtown public parking system. That study is intended to inventory available parking spaces, evaluate current demand and utilization, project anticipated future demand we may see with surrounding development projects or redevelopments in downtown, and provide recommendations to the city regarding the management and operation of that system. It is anticipated that that will include participation and involvement of a large and broad group of stakeholders, including relative city commissions, the Transportation Commission, Planning and Zoning Commission, the Chamber of Commerce, downtown businesses, and others that may have an interest in the topic. Staff has prepared a request for qualifications for the council's consideration and review this evening. The area identified in the RFQ for the study would extend on the north from C Street to the alley to the west of Jackson, down to approximately Lewis Street, and then over to Jefferson on the east. That doesn't include the bulk of the downtown parking system that's largely on Main Street, in the Jackson Street parking lots, or on the side streets in the downtown core. But as the city may evaluate different management strategies and practices for the parking system, we want to also understand how parking is either available or utilized on the fringe, because every change of management or duration may have an impact of moving parking around throughout the downtown parking system. So we do include a little bit larger area than just Main Street. The study approach as outlined in the RFQ includes an understanding and evaluating of existing conditions. That includes review of past studies, relevant historical documents, inventorying our existing parking facilities, both on-street and off-street parking lots, analyzing that capacity, its average availability and patterns of use of those facilities, and also to look at identifying those major demand generators so we can kind of anticipate how that parking is to be utilized and develop management strategies that addresses that. That'll include interviews of city staff, key stakeholders, as well as an assessment of our existing transportation systems and our mode shift to both walking and biking that is very high within Moscow, given the compact nature of the community and the college campus community. We'll look at also, we wanted the study to assess the availability and distribution of ADA parking facilities within the downtown core. That is an area we do hear interest in, of having access to ADA parking within the downtown area. So we'll evaluate where we have that parking presently. Are there any design compatibility issues we may have, and look at how we may look to improve that distribution throughout the area. The community also has a number of events that occur in the downtown core. Farmers Market runs most of the summer. We also have a number of block parties and other activities, so we also want to kind of assess that impact upon the public parking system downtown, and then we'll map that parking that's available within the area. We also want to look at some of the estimating the potential future additional demand that we may potentially see with redevelopment or other projects within the downtown area. Try to quantify those impacts, understand their impact on the existing parking supply, and look at how that can also impact parking utilization downtown into the future. We'll ask the consultant to identify best practices for downtown parking solutions. One of those things that we'll want to work with a stakeholder group is to try to identify, what do we wish to have the downtown parking system provide to the community? Is there a number of spaces per block on average we'd like to have available, so that we can evaluate different parking management strategies and programs to help achieve those goals and objectives. We'll look to develop some criteria and evaluation matrix through that process to help guide that decision-making and that evaluation of different parking management options as they may benefit the community. So we do anticipate that recommendations from the study will include parking management strategies and programs to help achieve those identified performance objectives. We also want to look at recommendations regarding parking management demand strategies we may implement to try to encourage and incentivize other modes of transportation to downtown, be it transit, be it walking or cycling, to enhance the user convenience of those modes to reduce that demand on downtown parking. We'll look at recommendations related to ADA parking supply and distribution, as I mentioned, and then look at anticipated future parking demand that we may see due to either downtown or near downtown developments over time, and understand if there's additional parking supply that we should be planning for as we move forward in the future, and of course, anything else that may come up over the course of the study. We are specifying that we'd like to have the consultant that is selected as a result of the RFQ to attend an initial meeting with that working group to outline the process and approach to the study, to meet with the city staff and working group as necessary through the development of the study, and then have a presentation of draft recommendations to that group, and then to attend 2 public meetings, probably open house meetings we'll have both early on to introduce the project to the community, as well as one when those initial results are vetted through that working group and available for public review and comment. And then finally, with a final presentation of the report's recommendations to the Moscow City Council. So the project schedule, as we've outlined, we have really the month of March for the RFQ advertisement. We go through interviews of the consultants that may respond to the RFQ in April, bring a council recommendation to the council for selection of a consultant and a contract for the project in May. Then June and July would be dedicated really to historical document review. That is a time period when the U of I is not in session, so we really don't want to do any actual parking utilization studies or assessments at that point in time, so we would use that for that historical document review. And then beginning in August through September, when the U of I is back in session, we would conduct the parking assessment, beginning in October with recommendations, and hopefully wrapping up the final project with delivery of the final report and recommendations to the council in November of this year. As this was a council initiative, staff wanted to make sure that we have scoped the RFQ appropriately for the study before it is published. If there is no other direction, we'll move forward with advertising and publishing the RFQ likely on Saturday, and that will give us the month of March, to advertise that and to be in a position to select a consultant, as I mentioned, interviews in April and a contract to the council in May. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions the council might have.
Questions for Bill before I open it up to public comment? Marie, did you have something you want?
Maybe you said it, but I missed it, and I missed it in the report as well. Who are the members of the downtown parking study working group?
So that has not been fully outlined yet.
Is it mainly, do you envision it being partially mainly staff, or what do you envision it being?
We envision having representatives from the Transportation Commission, the Planning and Zoning Commissions. Those are 2 city commissions that are most related to either land use and transportation system recommendations to the council. We'll obviously have the Chamber of Commerce and probably several downtown business representatives. We'll probably look to have a city council representative on that group as well, and probably a couple citizen at large. We may include representation from Gritman Medical Center as a large user downtown as well on South Main. So we haven't fully fleshed out that membership, but it's going to be staff will play a supporting role to that group and helping facilitate the meetings and the discussions and coordination of communications with the consultant. But we won't be members of that group. We'll be there as staff liaisons to support this study.
All right, just from when we talked about this at Public Works, we thought perhaps even a specific citizen with accessibility issues might be a part of that group.
Yes.
Art?
Yeah, where are we intending to publish the RFQ to get a good spectrum of potential respondents?
So we have a couple different locations. So obviously we publish on the city's website, and we're going to publish it in the newspaper. We also have a list of consultants that we have received in the past that perform these types of studies. So we'll do a direct solicitation there. And then we also have a Quest clearinghouse that is an electronic clearinghouse that we utilize for all of our public works construction projects. We'll post the RFQ on that site as well. Usually those get picked up. There are companies that do nothing but review legal ads of local papers, and consulting firms subscribe to their services. It helps them become aware of those opportunities. So we'll advertise it in a number of ways.
It's going to be a busy consultant looking at the scope there.
And that will be part of the negotiations, as this is a professional services. It is going to be, selection is based on qualifications, and then we negotiate the scope and the contract amount. We will have to tailor that to the funding that is available, and we will try to deliver as much of this as we can, and then supplement what we may need to with other staff resources as necessary.
Sandra?
So one thing I've been pondering since we heard this before, and it kind of dovetails on Maureen's question, but it has to do with time and the committee members. So I guess it's just a 2 cents request on that. I hope that when the committee gets together, they think about the variety of businesses, because I know there's a time issue about, people have talked about 90-minute parking and 3-hour parking. And when I was wandering downtown this past weekend, I thought there are a lot of folks, and I know it was a weekend, but they're at dinner, or they're having meetings downtown and they go a lot longer than 90 minutes. And so I hope that a lot of different businesses get represented on that for that time issue, because I think that could be very contentious and worrisome.
Yes, and always has been in the past. You may recall it was now nearly 10 years ago that a recommendation was advanced to change it to 90 minutes on Main Street, leave all the side streets as 3-hour to allow for that longer duration parking on the side streets. But the one area of parking that, in our observations and in our assessments we've done for other land use approvals, is Main Street is that parking that is most fully utilized. And so that is the location that I think we're hoping to try to encourage a little more turnover, a little more availability of parking on Main. But that'll have to be balanced against all of the various demands that the parking system has to meet.
And for the evening hours after 5, it makes no difference because there is no rule. If you got a meeting.
It is not enforced
Dinner.
after 5
for dinner,
o'clock.
it's not a big deal. So after 5 p.m.
But I have a lot of
it's not an
lunch
issue.
meetings.
Well, okay. Well, there you have
It's all
it.
about me right now.
Okay, thanks, Bill. Hang on just a second. Is there anybody in the public that'd like to, this is one of our action items, that'd like to speak to us? Well, come right up and tell us your name, ma'am, and we will give you 3 minutes. And I'll wait to start the time until you get to the podium.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Landis. I just have an observation question, and that's with MZ hiring 300 people. Do you know when they're hoping to do that? And just maybe how that factors into the timing of the parking study. So,
Well, I can answer one of those questions for you. Andrew told me they were trying to hire 100 people between now and the end of October.
October,
So,
okay.
it's gonna
And
be a
then the
period of
next
time.
200 sometime in the next.
Well, the way I understand it, once they get their building built, because they can't house anymore where they're at now, then that. Once that is done, they've got to wait until they get in a new facility.
Right, so I just didn't know if it's worth postponing this to see how many people are eating lunch during meeting times downtown. I don't know, it's just an observation I just wanted to bring up.
Thank you. Other comments? Okay, Bill, well, how would the council like to proceed?
I wanted to add one thing. I might have missed it when you mentioned it tonight, but you definitely did mention it at the presentation at Public Works, that you're planning to have one or two kind of open house opportunities throughout this process also, I
Correct.
believe.
We'll probably have one early on in the study to introduce it to the community, and then one once the first round of recommendations has been reviewed by the working group and advanced for community review.
Well, I think we need to know what we need to know, so I'd moved approval of the publication of the downtown parking study request for qualifications.
Second.
Go ahead.
Well, I gave it to Maureen. A second, she beat you. Okay, we have a motion by Art and a second by Maureen to approve the publication of the downtown parking study request for qualifications. I will start the roll with Ann.
Aye.
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 Aye?
Aye.
Okay, we will move forward on that. Thank you, Bill. Okay, item number 9. Phase 5 of the runway realignment project and terminal design grant application. Gary, you have the podium, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor. This was presented to Public Works Finance last week, and Public Works Finance wanted to put it on the regular agenda. Tony Bean, the Executive Director of the Pullman Moscow Regional Airport, was there presenting, As you can obviously see, I am not Tony Bean. He's nowhere in the room. And that's because he is in Arizona courting some airlines to hopefully get some additional services at the airport. The questions that were posed to him by the committee had to do with some of the financing behind the grant itself. The grant itself, as you can see from the memo that he authored and I put in your packet, asked him for that so that I could try and field some questions based on the commission or the committee's request. $6 million of this grant, which requires $257 in matching funds, are for the finalization of the the taxiway and runway project. So those are construction funds, and those are matched at 8.37%, I believe. So that's where that $530,257 number comes from. Additionally, there is another grant of $1 million, which the FAA has given in entitlement funds for the start of the planning for the terminal project. We knew about that last year in the FY20 budget. We'd included $40,000 on our side of the line. The city of Pullman included $40,000 in their FY 2020 budget as well, and $8,376 will be in airport funding on top of that to match that grant. There may be the opportunity for additional entitlement funds in the amount of $1 million, which would also go toward the terminal itself. That is uncertain at this point. This is a pre-authorization, if you will. At any rate, it leaves a balance of $491,000, which the match, it still has to be raised. There were additional overruns about, I think it was last summer, the mayor can correct me, being the vice chair of the airport board. The last bid on finalization of the runway taxiway project was about a $10 million overrun. There was match for that as well required. FAA came up with grants for that. There was a $600,000 match funding was granted by Whitman County in their .09 economic development funds, which leaves that $491,000, which is remaining. The mayor can comment on the airport board, which met last week. At that time, my understanding is that Tony Bean presented that $491,000, he has plans to solicit funding, additional match funding from other entities, and will continue to do so just as he did from Whitman County. But if that is unsuccessful, then it is possible that that funding, that match fund could come from a bridge loan from the city of Pullman and paid back over time as part of passenger facility charges generated by passenger boardings at the airport. So hopefully that's enough financial background. I'll answer any other questions that you might have.
And to Gary's point there, we think between being able to talk to some of our stakeholders as well as passenger facility charges, that we can make up that difference and pay for that, so.
Can I just ask you a question not related to that? Are they also still working on the Boise flight?
Yes.
Great.
And I'm going to talk a little bit about that when I give reports tonight, so
Okay,
the answer to that is, and we're never going to give up, more to come here at the end of the meeting when I
Great,
do
let's go.
reports, Breen.
Okay, there you go.
Thank you for separating those parts out. Okay. Yes, I appreciate that.
Well, this was reviewed in Public Works and Finance as well on the 24th.
So rather than sit in silence here, I would move adaptation of the resolution pre-authorizing the acceptance of the grant offer AIP 3-53-0051-051 from the FAA Airport Improvement Program. I read that well.
Second.
Thank you.
Okay, we've got a motion by Art and a second by Sandra to adopt a resolution pre-authorizing the acceptance of grant offer AIP 3-53-0051-051 from FAA Airport Improvement Program. I'll start the roll, Sandra.
Aye.
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 Okay. Now we will move on to item number 10. And Gary's been the headliner, I think, on that one as well. Investment Policy Resolution. Gary Reeder, you have the floor on this one as well.
Certainly, thank you. You'll recall that at last council meeting, the city council approved the agreement with Morton Asset Management to act as our city's investment advisor. This was done pursuant to an RFQ, which was issued in November. That selection was made. One of the things that we asked all of the responders, and we had 14 responders to that RFQ, request for qualifications. We asked them, take a look at, gave them our city investment policy, which was Resolution 2010-02, and asked them, in review of this investment policy, what recommendations would you make or would you think the city would want to look at? And they all responded with the recommendations. One of the things that came through was that your investment horizon is too long. The investment horizon in 2010-02 states that the city's finance director can invest up to 15 years in an investment horizon. Virtually every one of the respondents said, in today's market, that is way too long. The way that investments are going, especially when they have to remain somewhat liquidity based on, you just had the CIP presentation last Friday, we have a need to keep some liquid funds. So they recommended no longer than 5 years. So what you have in front of you is an amended resolution that essentially supersedes Resolution 2010-02. One of the other things that was recommended by Morton, which makes perfect sense as well, is when investments are being purchased in the secondary market, our previous investment policy, the current one as of today, calls for competitive bids from 2 brokers in the secondary market. Morton indicated that any more getting bids from 3 brokers makes more sense, so that recommendation is in there as well. Lastly, as we're going through trying to upgrade and become as responsive as we can, make sure that our resolutions don't come out of date, gave it to the city attorney. She recommended that we refer to the Idaho Code rather than actually cite language from the Idaho Code sections, particularly on the types of investments that we are allowed to invest in as a municipality, and a statement of the prudent investor rule, both of which are codified in the Idaho Code, but the legislature at any time can change the language. We would have to go back, insert that new language in the resolution, and have the council amend it. This way, the resolution keeps pace with whatever changes the legislature puts in those codes. So those are the 3 major changes in this revised resolution. Morton will not begin to assist us with investments until these resolution changes are made. So we would like to get them done as quickly as possible.
Okay, well, questions for Gary on this? We've talked about
I
this.
move approval of the investment policy as stated in the attached resolution and adopt the resolution.
Second.
Yeah, was that you, second?
Me.
Maureen, okay, I'm sorry, I couldn't. Okay, we've got a motion by Brandy and a second by Maureen to approve the investment policy as stated in the attached resolution and adopt the resolution. I'll take the roll with Ann.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, very good, thank you. Gary?
Catch the market while it's down, Gary.
Well,
No.
well, it's been a bizarre thing. Well, with that, we'll move on to reports. How about you? You got any reports for us
You know,
tonight?
my only reports were the capital improvement plan workshop and strategic planning workshop that we all attended, and really appreciated especially the capital improvement plan. It was very well done, thank you. And it was nice to spend a Friday with all of you, so that's all I have.
Maureen, do you have anything
No.
for us?
My meetings conflicted with city council meetings.
Okay. Yeah,
And all of my meetings are this week.
okay. Martha, we're clipping right along.
Yeah, well, I was at Historic Preservation Commission, And they had a few topics come up. They're looking to skip the annual newspaper insert brochure that discusses historic aspects of Moscow, and instead put their effort towards making some trifold historic district brochures for walking tours and having those stationed here and at Chamber of Commerce for people who want to walk Fort Russell or downtown historic districts. Also, they're looking at the potential of establishing another historic district kind of in the southeast between 6th Street and the Troy Highway and Main Street out to maybe Blaine, kind of the old farming community, Swedetown.
Swedish area.
Yeah. So they're looking at contemplating that. The library interpretive sign is nearing completion. They're submitting that to the library board for review. And let's see, looking at setting up future interpretive signs, Fort Russell, East City Park, and Friendship Square. So for a small commission, they're staying quite busy and churning things right along.
Sandra?
Let's see, I had the 1912 Center Facilities meeting, and things are moving along there. We talked about exciting things like HVAC installation, and where we could and could not raise arches. And the pocket doors are beautiful, and the little stage in the auditorium is going to be great. So it's fun and scary to see everything all torn up like that, but knowing that they're making progress. So that's great. And then there was as a side note, they had a great reception on Friday. I don't know if anyone else managed to make that or not, but just kind of a leap into the 1912 Center was the theme. And so progression's being made upstairs. It's great to see. And I think they're on track. No one knows at this point because everything's so new, but so far everything's on schedule. And then this past week, I went to the CETA meeting in Lewiston, and things are progressing there. They're doing a lot of great work in the Clearwater area. One thing, I don't know if it might make a difference to Ann. I don't know if they use the youth corps that the Forest Service had been running, but there was an organization that had been running that, and they have disbanded, and so CETA is going to try and take that over this year. So that will still be available. It's a really nice youth program. It's a lot of front-end work, but they think they can manage that. So they've decided to take that over and run with it. So it's nice. PCI has used them in the past. It's really nice to be able to contract out. They have different teams of youth from the Clearwater area all the way through Potlatch, and they will go in different sites, a lot of Forest Service work, and spend a certain amount of time doing projects. And it's great for the kids, and it's great for whatever organization utilizes that. So I'm glad to see that continue.
Okay, great. Well, I've got several things. I just want to, 219, we had the State of the City. That was kind of fun because we had all the counselors there for that, and that was a good time. We talked about a bunch of different things, and I'll leave it at that. On 221, I had an AIC legislative call, and then we talked about 408, 409. I'll get a little bit deeper in those here in a minute, but we had hired an executive director, and the guy decided not to take the job, so we're back to square one on that. So, you look like a great candidate. So anyway, so we're working on that. So more to come on that as we go along. On 222, we had coffee with the legislators, and I think both Brandy and Sandra were there for that. And we talked about 408, 409, and all of our legislators, we can be proud of them because Representative Gosling, Representative Troy, and Senator Nelson voted against that, which was the property freeze. And David, and I said thank yous to each one of them. It's in the Senate now, and I had got a confirmation and talked to David Nelson about that as well today. But anyway, those three legislators, and those coffee with the legislators, for those who've been down there, have been very busy, and a lot of people, maybe 50 people, 45, 50 people. And so it's been great conversations, and so hats off to them. On 224, I had the pleasure of going to Hal Foster's journalism class at the university. I got a chance to talk to some of the kids at that class, and they got a chance to hear my philosophy about a number of different things. So, and they were good sports to have me there. So as you all that know me, I can imagine what that was about. And then on 224 also, we had a MAAC meeting, Mayor's Youth Advisory Council meeting. We had Tammy Poe from Good Sam do a presentation to the kids about doing history of some of the people, the residents that are in the apartments at Good Sam, some of the older folks. And so I think the kids may take that on as a project this year. That'll be kind of an ongoing thing for them. At 226, we had the airport board meeting. Moraine, and we talked about the grant thing we talked about. We also got the grant thing lined up where we've got United. It looks like we're gonna get this thing, so we're gonna have a service to Denver. This is gonna start in the fall of the year probably. It won't be before October-ish, November-ish, but that's where we're hoping to get snagged this flight to Boise, because it's gonna be regional jets, 50-seater jets, and probably be operated by SkyWest. And so we're working on that. And
They'd go from here to Boise and then
well,
to Denver?
that's what we want. They're gonna go from here to Denver for sure, and we just hope that they'll stop off at Boise on the way, and so we're working on that. So, more to come on that as we go along, but one of the things I said, I think, at the State of the City, and I said it, we're never gonna ever give up working on a Boise flight, because we need one. But there's a transportation bill that Senator Johnson out of Lewiston brought forward to the connectivity of airports in the state of Idaho, because it's lousy, flying from here to Boise and Boise to, yeah, Twin Falls, the Pocatello area, up to Coeur d'Alene, so, and hopefully that'll be something that will guide us towards that as well, so. And then, of course, as you had said, we had our workshop here, our council workshop, and that was a good thing for capital planner and strategic planning, so it was very nice. Gary, have you got anything for us?
Yes, you forgot to mention that you and I will be attending the National League of Cities
will.
Congressional meeting in Boise beginning on Thursday.
And Art.
And Art, sorry, in Washington DC. I know Boise's almost Washington DC, but kind of got mixed up a little bit. I too wanted to thank the council and the mayor for spending the time with the capital improvement program, our first one that we've had in the city, and updating the strategic plan. It's great getting you guys together for a whole day and getting that through. Now we're wrestling upstairs with putting the budget calendar together. So we will move through that and get some information out on that. I know that Maureen and I both have some workshop conflicts in July with weddings of our kids.
Art.
No, well, Art's going on vacation.
Yeah, we have weddings, okay.
Yeah, weddings are a little bit. So anyway, so that's moving forward. Also, I wanted to talk a little bit about the novel coronavirus that is in the news these days. I had a conversation with Carol Murley, who is the head of the North Central District Health Department today. Usually we look to District 2 to give us some guidance on where things are going. She indicated that she applauds the actions of the Genesee and Troy school districts in taking precautionary measures and making sure that their schools are as clean as they can be and disinfected. However, she indicated that at this point, they understand that there is a potential, wanted to make sure that people are advised that the best way to not contract or spread the virus is to wash your hands, follow the same things that typical flu is. Wash your hands, make sure that you use disinfectant, cover your cough, all of those sorts of things. Encourage you to go to the North Central District Health Department website or the CDC to try and get additional information as well. Tomorrow morning, we will be having our executive management and department head meetings, and we will talk about continuity of service, something that we did back when the avian flu and the swine flu were prevalent, to make sure that we're able to provide essential city services should a significant portion of our workforce be laid up. So we'll continue that planning as we have in the past. But as it sits right now, we're taking precautionary measures, and hopefully it won't occur with the severity that it could.
With that site you're talking about, cdc.gov, that's the Control Center for Diseases, and I went on that website today, and it's a wonderful, I mean, it's got everything that you can find locally and all the way through, and most frequent questions asked, so on and so forth. And what I will share with you is, do not follow Facebook, because it's a bunch of BS. There's all kinds of stuff on Facebook that's just baloney. Anyway, so go to that, but that's a great site, cdc.gov, and it's a wonderful site. And Gary, don't we have a monthly breakfast meeting Wednesday morning as well?
As a matter of fact, we do.
Okay,
Thank you for reminding me, so I'm
counselors.
sure we'll talk about it then as well.
Okay, with that, I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
Let's roll.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're out of here at 9:06. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this evening.
Especially the ones that stuck it out.